today I'm joined by Dan Oweiler, and he's with Sterling Financial. And many of us are concerned about our finances when you see the market go down or up, or, volatility right now is pretty crazy. So Dan, thank you for joining us today.
Well, happy to be here. Hopefully everybody's safe and sound over there.
Yes, well, we certainly are trying to be so. Although when you look at our finances, some people are having to dip into their savings, especially if you had a job and maybe you don't have a job.
Right.
But they also may have lost money on the market. So you evidently you have a sort of a brochure that kind of goes over things to look for when the market's down.
Everybody has concern when the market goes down. Back in March, when it was 34%, everybody was freaking, and rightfully so. You retire based upon projections that you have, and or your 401k, you're getting ready to retire, and all of a sudden now it's down 35%. It wakes you up fairly quickly. Now, luckily, over the last couple of months or so, it's come back a little bit, and it's not down quite as much, but it's still down. It always brings a consternation with people as they start doing planning for retirement.
Right. Well, as I look through your brochure, you have just kind of right at the beginning, it talks about investment markets go through cycles. So we're seeing that now, right?
Up and down, but it's the bear markets that really impact us. What I have found, Lisa, is that when people retire, losing money in their portfolio is going to affect their life much more than making more money, generally speaking. It's going to impact us negatively much more than it's going to help us. And so as they get into this retirement stage or retirement mode, people really ought to step back and say, okay, how much risk do I really want to take? Is it worth it? I had a client come in this past week, and he's had money in the market, and he's 72 years old. And he says, Dan, he says, at this stage of my life, why am I even risking it? And that's a good question that you have to ask yourself. In the brochure, I talk about dealing with these down markets really is a lot easier if you have an organized financial plan in place.
Right.
If you have a financial plan in place and your income is fairly secure, having a down market isn't quite as critical as if you don't have a plan.
Exactly. And I guess sometimes people want to sit on their cash. What does that do to them?
Well, people get very comfortable if they've got a lot of money in the bank. I have a client coming in this afternoon, and her husband, unfortunately, just passed away, but she has a lot of money sitting in cash that's earning, 0.25%, 0.5%, not too much. Maybe if you're in a CD, you might be getting 1.5%. Generally speaking, you're not even keeping up with inflation. People have a comfort level of having money in cash, but you're missing opportunities to maybe have a secure future by liquidity costs us, okay? Either costs us with risk in the market, or it costs us in inflation risk, what we call inflation risk, because you've got money sitting in cash. Can emotionally tell what people are comfortable with. Sometimes they're comfortable with 100,000, sometimes they're comfortable with 250. Anything over 250, I think, is getting a little bit extreme, because how often do you need $250,000 in cash?
Right.
But people have to make that decision themselves. But if you have a plan in place and have an emergency fund available in that plan, then the other stuff that you can do a little bit better planning for and getting you a better return.
Okay. And you also say in there that you need to, like you said, follow a plan, but don't do anything drastic. Some people are like, oh my gosh, panic sets in.
Exactly. I keep going back to clients because this is very normal to me. She thought she was conservative, and her husband had passed away, left a lot of life insurance, and kind of was working with a couple of advisors, I being one. I take the conservative approach. The other advisor is a little bit more aggressive and took an aggressive approach. And when the market hit back in, I don't know, the end of last year, so maybe the first part of this year, the market went down a lot. Mm-hmm. She came in and she says, I thought I had a better stomach for this, but I don't, and so we moved some of that money out of the market and into some secure type of investments. But people really need to have a plan in place so they can follow that plan, and don't blow up the plan just because the market went down. Okay, you need to stay consistent with your plan so those principles over time can work their course. Judging a plan over 1 or 2 years never works. It's over a 10, 15-year period that these principles are made to follow through, because we know the market is going to go up and down at some point.
Right. Let's talk about, there's a study, Sun Life Financial. They had a study where it talks about emotion-based benefits. So can you kind of give me an idea of what that was all about?
It says 63% of the respondents agreed that they worried less about money because they had a financial plan. 73% believe that a financial plan had helped give them greater peace of mind. And then they said people with a financial plan are 2 times more likely to be confident in their plans going forward.
Right.
So having a organized plan really does bring what I call peace of mind and confidence going forward, as long as that plan fits into your risk tolerance and income needs. You don't want to have a plan that doesn't fit your risk tolerance. And so generally speaking, as I've mentioned before with you and Ken before, that as people get into retirement, how we invest at age 45 is different than how we invest at age 75. And our risk tolerance needs to be a little bit different, and not blowing up this plan just because we have a change or a downturn in the market. We want some money to be able to grow through that market, but we don't want to have the majority of it at risk that will blow up the plan itself.
Right. Yeah, it's a tough market because we are in a situation where, most of us are probably not spending as much money because we can't go out and spend the money in places or even travel like we would normally do.
And we're supposed to be getting money back from our insurance companies because we're not driving as much.
Oh, that'd be nice.
I've yet to see my check from my car insurance company, but they said, well, because you're not driving as much, we can refund some of your premium. Well, I haven't seen that yet, but that might be the case. But
well, I don't know. Wouldn't that be nice if that really was the case? They would actually send us money back.
Well, it does. I think that in the long run, I think we're probably going to run into a recession coming in, just because the impact that it's had on the economy. Restaurants, movie theaters, the airline industry, all of this is going to be impacted as a result of locking down this economy. And it's, unfortunately, I don't like to get into politics a lot on this show, but it's easy for a politician to lock down to the economy because he's still getting his paycheck.
Right.
If they didn't get a paycheck like the rest of us don't, if the economy, they may open it up a little bit quicker than they would normally do that. But politicians get paychecks no matter what they do. And so it's not always driven. I saw where San Diego Unified School District is closing down for the fall. They're not going to allow kids to come back to school. LA did that yesterday, I saw. Well, it's easy for them to say that because that's not the teachers are still getting paid and things like that. They say, well, we're basing it on science. We're going to allow science to dictate this. Well, sometimes common sense needs to dictate this as well. It can't just all be science. we have to have a combination of common sense as well as science to come to direct this. And so, you know, what side of the political aisle you're on really isn't as critical as what's going to happen to our retirement going forward and having a plan in place.
Exactly. That's where, you know, you say common sense really does come into play when you're talking about your retirement. Because I think, I don't know, for myself, you know, you have to evaluate where you live is very important, and the cost of living, depending on how much money you have, you know, in your retirement savings or plan or whatever it might be. And so when you look at something like that, you've got guidelines, you know, what to do in a down market, and you have dollar cost averaging. Is that kind of, tell me about that.
Dollar cost averaging is where you, let's say that I have $500 extra every month and I want to invest that. What you do is you invest that every month, no matter what the market is doing, because over time, it's going to average out your cost, because you're going to buy in a low market, you're going to buy in a high market. You just don't know when. But if you do it consistently over time, it averages out your overall cost of the portfolio, and it generally is lower over the long run.
Okay. And then considering your risk tolerance, which we already talked a little bit about, in relation to your goals.
Right.
So, you know, if your goal is to stay here in California, then you want to make sure you have enough money to stay in California.
Why would you do that? No, I'm kidding. I have a lot of clients that when they retire, you know, bon voyage, and we're going to a state that doesn't tax me so much, and you know, I can buy a house for cash, and you know, it's unfortunate. That's the nature of the beast.
Exactly.
We pay for this good weather.
Oh yeah.
You know, there's not, Hawaii might be the other option, but Hawaii is going to be much more expensive than California, but there's no other place in the country that has the weather that we do. You know,
exactly.
It's either got humidity and bugs and hurricanes, or you can have California and pay the price for that.
Well, exactly. Well, there's a lot of us that are still here, so we're paying the price.
Exactly.
So tell me, if people want to get a hold of you and they'd like a copy of this brochure we've been referring to, what should they do?
Yeah, they can give us a call. Our phone number is 949-859-8900. Maybe you can put that up on the screen at some point. And or they can email me at dan@sterlingfa.com. Either one of those, we can give them a copy of this brochure, and we'd be happy to sit down and even do a Zoom conference or a telephone call if they'd like to discuss their own personal situation.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
It's always great to chat with you, Lisa. Hopefully we can do this in person before too long.
I hope so. Thank you.
All right, we'll be in touch.
Okay. And we'll be right back after this.